You're watching FJTN, the Federal Judicial Television Network.
Do you solemnly swear that you will justly, truly, fairly, and impartially act as an interpreter in the case now before the court?
The key element for an interpreter is that you have to be accurate in your translation.
Bueno, yo no sabía si Juan estaba por allí, así que bajé al restaurante a ver si estaba trabajando.
Well, I didn't know if Juan was around, so I went down to the restaurant to see if he was working.
In United States federal courts, it's essential that defendants understand the proceedings. This is true whether or not the defendant speaks or understands the English language.
Do you understand the charges which the government has brought against you?
你明白检察官对你的起诉吗？
我明白。
I understand.
Accurate interpreting is very important in court proceedings. Court interpreters help the court be an impartial evaluator of the facts in a proceeding. The role of the interpreter in court has been prescribed by law in the Court Interpreters Act. That law says that the court shall use an interpreter when a party, including a defendant in a criminal case or a witness, speaks only or primarily a language other than the English language, so as to inhibit such parties' comprehension of the proceedings or communication with counsel. Court interpreters put a non-English speaking defendant on an equal footing with an English-speaking defendant.
Yeah.
Correct.
Please state your full name.
请把你的名字说出来。
我的名字叫王英。
My name is Yang Wang.
And where do you live?
你在哪里住？
我住在 Springfield West Street 1222号。
I live on 1222 West Street, Springfield.
Do you understand that you are now under oath, that you must answer all my questions truthfully, and that if you do not tell the truth in response to my questions, you can be prosecuted for perjury, and your false answers can be used against you if you are prosecuted for perjury?
Language is the primary form of communication in a court, and so court interpreters make it possible for a non-English speaking defendant to participate in the proceedings that will help determine his or her guilt or innocence.
It charges that on or about April 25th of last year, you, Ying Wan, unlawfully and knowingly received and possessed a firearm shipped in interstate commerce.
这个起诉书说，在去年4月25号左右，你王英被起诉是不合法，而且明明晓得拥有枪支，把枪带到别的州去。
Do you understand the charges which the government has brought against you?
你明白检察官对你的起诉吧？
我明白。
I understand.
You have the right to the assistance of a lawyer at all stages of these criminal proceedings, and if you're unable to afford one, the court will assign one to you. Do you understand this?
你明白，在刑事案子整个过程，你有权利聘请一个律师代表你。如果你没有钱去请律师的话，法庭可以指派一个律师代表你。
我明白。
I understand.
Interpreters should become familiar with court terminology because the meaning of some words can be different from ordinary usage. You should inquire whether your court has a glossary of frequently used terms. Because the interpreter enables the non-English speaking defendant to participate in court proceedings, it's important that you know the proper procedure for interpreting in court. And also understand that there are rules that govern what interpreters do. Federal Rule of Evidence 604 requires the interpreter to take an oath to faithfully and impartially interpret the speech of the witness or defendant. It's a great responsibility, says Kevin Devaney, a professional interpreter with 15 years' experience in court interpreting.
Interpretation is very important because the role of the interpreter is to allow the evidence to come out, and that is the basis on which important decisions are made that affect the defendants. All parties depend on the interpreter, and if they do not have confidence in the interpreter, then the communication will be less effective. The key element for an interpreter is that you have to be accurate in your translation. You should not be omitting things. You should not be adding things.
The impartiality of the court governs interpreters' behavior. For example, interpreters are never to take sides in any matter for which they are interpreting.
whatever opinion an interpreter has is an opinion that should be kept to himself or herself, and you should avoid anyway in giving any indications as to what your opinion may be. After that, there's the issue of confidentiality. An interpreter really should not repeat to any other party what they hear in the courtroom. You really should go to all lengths possible to maintain yourself as an independent and impartial party. And if you were to give statements that might tend to show bias one way or the other.
Impartiality affects interpreters in other ways, too.
Among other things, this implies that you shouldn't be accepting payment from anyone except the court for work done in the courtroom.
Some, but not all, courts have equipment to facilitate and improve the quality of interpretation and give the interpreter more flexibility. With an infrared system, which can be portable or fixed, the interpreter listens to the courtroom PA system. The interpretation is carried by way of an infrared beam from a control box to a small headset worn by the defendant. It's the same principle as a remote control for a television set. Another advantage of such equipment is that the interpreter is physically removed from the defendant, which reduces the possibility of the defendant initiating casual conversation with the interpreter. In the courtroom, the judge presides over the conduct of the proceedings. He or she maintains order and makes rulings on points of law. The attorney representing the government, which has brought charges against the defendant, sits at a table facing the judge's bench. The defendant and his attorney sit at another table. In a jury trial, the jury decides the facts of a case based on the presentation of evidence and the testimony of witnesses. In a bench trial, there is no jury. It is the judge who decides the facts. Witnesses testify about the facts that are in dispute. They testify from a witness stand which faces both parties. Testimony is part of the permanent record of the proceedings. This record ensures that there can be no doubt about what occurred in the courtroom. The record is made by electronic sound recording or taken down by a court reporter.
Tell us when you were employed, during what period of time?
Díganos cuándo fue que estuvo empleada, durante qué periodo de tiempo.
Desde marzo hasta septiembre.
From March to September.
Was it last year you worked for Mr. White, from March to September?
¿Fue el año pasado que trabajó para el señor White de marzo a septiembre? Yes.
Sí.
Yes.
And where was it that you worked?
¿Y dónde fue que trabajó?
Tenía una pequeña oficina auxiliar en su casa y a veces me hizo trabajar ahí.
He had a small office at home and sometimes he had me work there.
How often did you work there?
¿Cuán a menudo trabajó allí?
Quizás 1 o 2 veces al mes.
Perhaps once or twice a month.
It is the interpreter's rendition in English at the witness stand that is taken down, not what the witness says in the source language. Judges and juries base their decisions about witnesses' testimony as rendered by a third party, the interpreter. That is why accurate interpretation is so important. In fact, in some cases, the court may also record the interpreter's and defendant's words in the source language, if the judge determines that it's necessary to ensure the rights of the defendant. Another important person in the courtroom is the courtroom deputy, who helps the judge keep things moving smoothly. This person sits below the judge, marks evidence, and administers oaths to witnesses and interpreters.
United States versus Ying Wan.
The deputy will swear the interpreter.
Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Your Honor. Bruce Chen, C-H-A-N.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will justly, truly, fairly, and impartially act as an interpreter in the case now before the court?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Now, we're starting this trial today. The motions have been resolved. Ms. Brown, are you ready for the government?
I am, Your Honor.
Mr. Reynolds, are you ready for the defendant, Ying Wan?
Yes, Your Honor.
Once sworn in, the interpreter is an officer of the court.
An interpreter is considered an officer of the court because there is that relationship of an oath that is stated to the court, to the judge, in front of all of the parties. The exact wording can vary from courthouse to courthouse. I believe that it generally includes the elements of impartiality and accuracy.
Because interpreters must give an accurate rendition of what is being said, they need to sit or stand where it's possible to hear and see the defendant, witnesses,